everyone, welcome. Today we're going to paint a fairy penguin. I'm using White Nights watercolors and Arch's cold press watercolor paper and just one single watercolor brush to do this. So we're going to start by just drawing a circle, and this is going to be the head of your penguin. And then you're going to measure down approximately 2.5 circles below that and mark the bottom. This will be the bottom of the penguin's body. Now you're going to do 2 widths of the circle wide, and that'll be the width of the body. So now I'm going to come back up here, and about halfway down from the top of the circle, I'm going to make a line and then start drawing my beak. And you can just shape that beak naturally. And then I'm going to start drawing the back of my penguin. So I'm going to kind of gradually shape this, start sketching the back. It kind of curves out and then comes back in by the tail. And I use a pretty sketchy hand. So now I'm just sketching in the tail. Then I'm going to add the foot, which should align with the back of the head. So come straight down from the back of the circle, and that is where your foot's going to be. You can kind of sketch it out as I'm doing here. It doesn't need to be too complicated. And then add another foot right behind that. Now we're going to come to the front of the penguin. So just start curving your line out. They just kind of have these cute little oval bodies. And now I'm going to go back in and erase some of my lines. You always want to try to do this with any watercolor painting because once you put the paint over your pencil lines, they will be there to stay. Now I'm just going to widen my penguin's body a little bit. You don't really have to do this. Again, I'm erasing some of the lines. So I'm going to add a little eye here, and it kind of aligns with the top part of the beak. Doesn't need to be too complicated, a little circle, kind of an almond shape. And now halfway from the top of the body is where the flipper is going to start. I'm also going to draw a line to delineate between the darker part of the body and then the white stomach and breast that they have. So I'm drawing that line right now. And then this is where my flipper is going to start. And it's just a pretty easy curved shape. And they have 2 colors on their flippers, so the top part is darker and then they have like this white stripe along the bottom. So now I'm just erasing some more of my lines, again to keep my sketch clean. Then I'm going to add a little flipper that's coming out on the other side of his body. And that's it. To begin painting, I'm going to use a wet on wet technique. I'm going to just start on the breast and the stomach, the front of the body. So I'm applying clean water. And then I'm dropping in a little bit of light ochre. You could probably also use cadmium yellow for this. Just let that color softly bleed in there. And then I'm going to use clean water for the back. So again, I'm going to use the wet on wet technique. Get this part of my penguin pretty wet. Be mindful here not to mix the water on the front of your penguin with the back of your penguin too much, or all your colors will bleed together. So now I'm going to use some cerulean blue, and I'm just going to start laying down a base wash. Again, it doesn't need to be too fussy. Just drop some blue in there, let it go wherever it may go. Bring a little bit into that flipper. And then I'm going to pull it up onto the back of the head. Just start shaping and shading around the eye a bit, underneath the eye, onto the beak. and start bringing some transparent layers into the feet. And now I'm going to add some layers beneath the penguin to start just suggesting some type of ground and shadow and texture. Now I'm going to use Payne's Gray, and this is really going to start bringing in those dark hues onto my penguin. They kind of have like a bluish navy black appearance depending on if they've been swimming, how the sun is shining on them. You can get some really pretty blue colors on them, but I'm really going to use a lot of Payne's Gray on this. So don't overdo this part, just add a little bit more pigment. And then after this step, we're actually going to walk away, let it dry, take a little break, and then once we come back, you'll do the next step. So for this next part, once your first layer is completely dry, you're going to start using a brighter blue. I'm using cobalt blue from my palette, but you can use any pretty blue from yours. And we're going to do a wet on dry layer. So get a really transparent, pretty blue value onto your brush. And you're just going to start adding a layer of that over top of the Payne's Gray and the cerulean blue that you already have on there. And this is going to be applied to all the darker parts of your penguin's body. Again, don't feel like you have to overcomplicate any step of this. Like, it's just one layer at a time. Very simple. And if you feel like you get anything anywhere, you can always dab it off. And now I'm going to come back in. So that layer is still wet, and I'm going to bring more Payne's Gray in to really give my penguin even more contrast. And I'm going to start outlining just the edge of the flipper. Make sure that the water that you've applied is not going beyond the flipper in this case, because that pigment is going to run into any area that has water on it right now. And as you're doing this, you can kind of blot the pigment in as I'm doing here, and it'll bleed out in a really pretty organic way. So now I'm just going up around the top of the head. And now I'm going to start bringing that in closer to the eye and then eventually onto the beak. Now I'm bringing some of the pigment into the actual eye itself. And I'm still just blending into this same wet layer that I've added. Now I'm adding some more definition to the beak. And then right again up into the eye. And now I'm going to come down to those feet, and you can really, really call out the backs of their little legs, especially to give your illustration some more definition. Now I'm just going to use the tip of my brush to just pull some feathers out at the end of that tail. And I love this brush that I have because it has a very pointed tip, and so it allows me to add detail where I want to, but then also to add washes and to cover a large amount of space. So right now I'm just using, again, Payne's Gray. My layer is still a little wet, so my pigment's blending out a little bit, but I can control it. I'm really trying to define underneath the flipper as well as just add some more shading and some more texture. And now I'm going to grab some of that cobalt blue and let that bleed in a little bit more. Just blend it in a bit, just to bring in some more beautiful color. Add a little bit along the top edge of the flipper, and then let this layer completely dry. Okay, so once those layers have dried, come back in with some cerulean blue, and I'm doing the wet on dry technique. I'm just going to add some more very light shading underneath the flipper here. And now I'm going to start adding some to that other flipper on the other side of the body. Call out those feet a little bit, the bottom of the body. And you can add some more blue to just right underneath the penguin, suggesting some texture, some rocks, or maybe standing in some water. You can just drag your brush along the paper. If you're using a textured paper, actually a lot of times you'll get this really pretty texture that shows through as you're dragging your brush. And now I'm going to come back up to the head, add a little bit more shading, just trying to blend in any hard edges that might be there. And this is where we start adding some more definition. So add a little bit of dark to the eye itself, a little bit around the eye. And now add some more definition to the beak. And I'm just using Payne's Gray again, but you can use indigo, a darker blue, whatever you feel is fit for your illustration. I'm going to come down to the feet now, call out that leg a bit more. And this is really where I'm allowing my brush and that really pointed tip to do a lot of the work. So again, I love this brush. I can practically sketch with it. Now I've just got some Payne's Gray on the brush. Again, adding some sketchy lines underneath the penguin and right around this little flipper. So watercolor is all about just adding definition and detail as you go through layers. And that's exactly what we're doing here. But you also don't want to overcomplicate it. And now I'm just going to add one more wash of that really light Payne's Gray over top of all my dark areas. Add a little bit more texture to the tail and to the bottom of the penguin to suggest some shading. Now I'm going to outline that other flipper a bit. Going to add a little bit of definition to the body. And to right underneath that flipper. And again, I'm going to try to call out more of the definition in those feet. These guys actually have like pink feet. I'm not going to add that right now, but if you wanted to make his little feet pink, you could. Now I'm adding some cobalt blue just to add a little bit of bright color to the ground. And now once it's completely dry, I'm going to go in and erase any pencil lines that I can get rid of. And my final step is just going back one more time with this really beautifully pointed brush, some Payne's Gray. Add any final definition or outline that you may need to add to your illustration. Maybe it's nothing at all. Maybe it's a little bit to the eye, to the beak, to the feet, anything. And finally, since we're doing a fairy penguin, we're going to add a little fairy dust. So do a fun little splatter. You can use any blue that you want to use. And this always just adds a little magic to any watercolor painting. And that's it. There's your little penguin. I hope you had fun. I hope it was relaxing. And let me know if you have any questions or comments. Bye.